Without further ado, Joe Dittmar.
Are we live? Oh, it works. Yay. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It is great to be here with all of you. First of all, I'm really mad at Brunswick CC. They didn't tell me that I was following Bill Cosby last week or the week before. Wow. I mean, I'm just a guy, so this is pretty unbelievable. And did you notice something I thought was kind of interesting? We had the first responders stand up, and we're really, first of all, thank you for your service. We can't say it enough. But did you notice, the law enforcement guys, they're kind of spread out, okay? The firefighters, they're all in one place, okay? They're all together. It must be the way that these guys flock together. Truly an honor, a great honor to be here today at Brunswick Community College, especially to be a part of the Brunswick Community College Foundation's Community Breakfast. Neither the college nor the foundation could flourish if it wasn't through this community support and contributions. Today, you're here as a part of that support function. So thank you for being a part of this important event. I'd also like to extend my personal thanks to Mike Forte and to Alina Di Costanzo for their hospitality, for their great spirit, and for their allowing me to be a part of this event. As part of its mission statement, the Foundation seeks to encourage lifelong learning of all throughout the community. The Foundation, by making scholarship support funds available for those in need, allows deserving women and men to make the positive decision to go further in their education. Without those funds, they could not make such a critical decision. You know, decisions are an integral part of our everyday life, and the ability to make good decisions is a foundation for how we live and how we succeed. Coming here today was a conscious decision, one of many that you make every day in order to move ahead in your education, your career, and in your life. Our life is full of decisions, some big, some small, some instant, some well thought out. Decisions are critical, and your ability to make these decisions is central to your performance. The information you bring to the decision-making process affects that process in ways more important than you would have ever thought. It's what you know, who you know, and how confident you are in those sources that make the decision possible, for right or for wrong. Sometimes, in that process, you're thrust into the role of leader, and you aren't even sure how you got there. But in the end, you're forced to make a decision that can have dramatic effects on many others. And when you're at that point, it's one thing to have that resource, that data, that information, that background, but sometimes there is no resource, no info, and you need to make a decision with your gut feel because you're completely clueless. You can't go with the flow because there is no flow to go with, and that truly is decision-making with a twist. So, okay, you're sitting here this morning thinking, okay, what makes him some kind of expert at decision-making? Is it the fact that I've become a fairly successful insurance exec for a billion-dollar corporation making million-dollar choices daily? Or does it lie in the wisdom of asking my very best friend in the entire world to marry me 35 years ago? Or does it lie in the ability to raise 4 children and guide them all to receive full academic scholarships to college? Well, these things are proof of something, maybe some bragging, but maybe not decision-making. Rather, I would think that my decision-making expertise was tried, tested, and galvanized on September 11, 2001. You see, I was on the 105th floor of Two World Trade Center, the South Tower, when the events of that day began to unfold. And my ability to be here today to relate all this to you is testament to making solid decisions. Let me share my story with you so that you can see how the decisions of many affected that day. As I mentioned, I'm in the insurance industry. And as you can hear from my voice, I too do not come from this part of the world. I come from another place north of wherever Leland called Philadelphia, okay? And I'm going to age myself a little bit. I went to Temple University in Philadelphia. Bill Cosby, okay. And when I went, my goal was to graduate. I was in the School of Communications and Theater, and I was going to be a disco DJ, okay? That was my life. That's what I was going to be, okay? But my dad was in the insurance business, his dad was in the insurance business, and his dad was in the insurance business. I didn't stand a chance. I knew exactly what I was going to be when I grew up. And actually, one of the best things I ever did. It's made me a great life. If you know anything at all about the World Trade Centers, what you will realize is that the trade centers were somewhat of a mecca for the insurance industry. Virtually every insurance organization throughout the country, probably throughout the world, had offices there at the trade center. So it was not unusual for a guy like me in a position like mine to be asked to attend a meeting there. In August of 2001, Mary Wieman, this extremely powerful woman from the Aon Corporation, this woman who had smashed through the glass ceilings of what the insurance industry had at that particular point in time, she called me in August and she asked me to attend a meeting the following month. I didn't want to go to Mary's meeting. I had the chance at the same time to go to another type of insurance meeting, the type of insurance meeting that involves aluminum or titanium sticks about this little long, little metal head on the end, little white balls in the grass, and you go like that. That was the meeting I wanted to attend. And so I was kind of hesitant to accept Mary's invitation. And Mary did to me what every woman has been doing to me since the day I was born. She threw good old-fashioned Catholic guilt down on my head and said, "Sure, Joe, no problem. I'm sure it won't be a big deal that nobody from your company's there. I'm sure your boss won't mind that your company isn't represented at this meeting. It's an important meeting. I'm sure it's not going to be..." I said, "Mary, stop. Stop. I will be there. I'll be there." And so it was. My dad was my mentor in the business, my hero in life, and he taught me a lot of things. And one of the things he taught me was plan your work and work your plan. And that's exactly what I did. I said, okay, I can do all this. I can still go to that meeting. I can still go to her meeting. I can do all kinds of things. So I made a plan. So on the Friday before the Tuesday, I went back to Philadelphia, the city that I was born and raised in, and I visited my mom and dad in the house that I grew up in as a kid. On Saturday, I visited my sister, something that I still don't do enough of at this point in time. And on Sunday, I went to the Eagles-Rams football game with my son. Yeah, it's interesting. My son's now 32 years old. I buy the season tickets to the Eagles, and he sits in the seats. What a good deal for him. That's a great deal for him. The bank of dad never closes, you know, that's really what happens. But anyhow, my son, it's interesting. My son works for Valero Oil. He is what, in essence, is a roughneck. When there's a fire, when there's an explosion, he's out on the pipelines. He's one of the guys that goes out first. He's a little shorter than me. He's definitely in much greater shape than me and much stronger than me, but he's a little shorter guy. But because he does what he does, he thinks he's macho. He's a tough guy, you know? And it was really interesting. We're coming out of that game that day, and we're walking across this huge parking lot, and here's this kid, and all of a sudden he gives me this big giant bear hug. And he kind of whispers in my ear, I miss you, Dad. And I pushed back a little bit, and I see a little tear in his eye, and I knew he wasn't crying because of the game. The Eagles beat the Rams. Everybody beats the Rams. I guess it was a pretense of what was about to occur, and we just didn't know it. And he got in his truck, and I got in my car. I took my way down into South Jersey to a beautiful Marriott Resort Seaview Country Club, and on Monday morning woke up and had that meeting, had a little bit of lunch afterwards, had a real business meeting on Monday afternoon, and I was going to then go to the notorious insurance dinner. And I say notorious, if any of you are in the insurance industry, you probably already get this. Insurance dinners have this way of starting and then never ending, okay? They just go on and on and on, and there's usually a bar involved. I'm not sure why, but that's usually what happens, okay? And I told the guys that day, listen, I can't do this. I can't pull an all-nighter with you boys. I can't have too much fun. I got to get up early the next morning. This was my plan. If you've ever been to New York, if you come from the New York area, if you visited New York, the one thing you absolutely, positively know about New York is that you don't want to drive into New York City. It's a mess. It's tough, okay? So that was my plan, and that's exactly what I was going to do. I was going to get up in South Jersey, go back to Philadelphia to 30th Street train station, Amtrak, and take the train to New York City. That was the way to go, and that's exactly what I did. Got up at 3:30 in the morning, drove back to Philadelphia. Got there at about 5:30, bought my round-trip Amtrak ticket. Train pulled in at about 6 a.m. Went down the steps, got into the club car, took off my suit coat, took off my backpack. I don't carry a briefcase, I carry a backpack. Took out my laptop, sat down, got myself all prepared, turned the laptop on, and did what all of us insurance executives do at 6 a.m. in the morning on the Metroliner going to New York. I fell asleep. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. It was awful early. It was awful early. And off we went. And we were about 2/3 of the way up to New York City when my cell phone rang. Wow, cell phones. You know, there are a few of you here that I can see that actually don't remember life before cell phones. That's pretty incredible. But for those of us who remember back in the day, okay, and there are a few of us that remember back in the day when we didn't have these cell phones, life was a whole lot different, okay? When you were going on a business trip like the one I was going on, you had to have an itinerary. You had to have a written piece of paper that showed you where you were going, when you were going to be there, what time you were going to be there, what hotel you were staying at, what room you were going to be in, and you took your AT&T long distance card because God forbid you had to pay for those long distance calls. This was before rollover minutes and national plans and all this stuff. You had to have it down. You had to know exactly where you're going to be and when you were going to be there. Now with cell phones, wherever you are, that's where you'll be. Just hit me up on the cell phone. It's no big deal. I know that from Mike because he got about 13 calls while I was having dinner with him last night. It's amazing. Everybody just needs to talk to everybody else, and they instantaneously do it. So here I am on that train, and I'm fast asleep, and my cell phone rings. And before I had gone on this trip, I had said to my wife, listen, I have a New York meeting on Tuesday. I'm going back to Philly on Friday, visit the family, go to the game with Joe. Meeting's on Tuesday morning. I'll be back Tuesday night. Love you. That's all I told her. That's all I told her. Cell phone rings. Pick it up. I said, hey, hello. I was asleep, you know. And my wife said, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you up. I said, no, that's okay. The train is about to pull into Newark, and I got to get off. And she said, Newark? I thought you said you were going to New York. And I said, yeah, but it's a lot easier to get to the World Trade Center, which is where I'm going, if I take the PATH train from Newark, because the PATH stops right underneath the World Trade Center. So that day, I told my wife exactly where I was going to be. And I got off the Amtrak train dutifully with thousands of other New Jerseyans and made my way on to New York City and into the Trade Center. And it was pretty amazing. The women and men in charge of building security at that particular point were already on top of their game. They seemed to have some way of recognizing who did and who didn't belong. And this wasn't with cards or anything else. It was just by the faces, okay? They recognized. There could have been as many as 25,000 people in each building at any particular point in time, and yet they seemed to know. And security was good. The 93 bombing made sure of that, okay? These guys were on top of their game. I walked in This guy must have known immediately that I was not from there because he kind of waves me over to the security desk. And off I went and ID'd myself with my driver's license, and he took my picture electronically. And with that picture, he puts it onto a little card, little white plastic card, electronically transfers it on there, and it had my name, the company that I was going to visit, Aon, the floor that I was going to be on, 105, how long the card was good for. It was good until September 12, 2001, and a barcode. And the barcode was the most important thing on that card, not just because it contained all that information I just mentioned, but also because that was the way you swiped your way through the electronic turnstiles that separate you from the elevators. Both buildings were identical. Both buildings were 110 stories high. The 110th floor in the North Tower was the Windows of the World restaurant, and unfortunately, that was open that morning. The 110th floor and the 106th floor in the South Tower, the building that we were in, were observation decks. The other floors that I did not mention above 105 in both buildings were heating, ventilation, air conditioning, elevator equipment, elevator cables, so on and so forth. No human beings. So we were getting ready to head up to 105 in the South Tower, the highest occupied level of the building at that particular point in time. We swiped our way through, and you had your choice: a bank of elevators to the right that serviced the 1st through the 77th floors, or a bank of elevators to the left that went on an express basis to the sky lobby level on floor 78. Both buildings had this, a second lobby known as the sky lobby level. And there you would take these elevators up and you would transfer then to another set of elevators that would service everything from 79 through 110. And we did exactly that, went up to 78, off and up to 105. And when we stopped at the 105th floor and the doors opened, there was Mary Weeman, the woman that I had mentioned earlier, the woman that had shamed me to be at this meeting. And there's Mary, and it was surreal. In one hand, she's got a spray bottle of Murphy's oil soap, and in the other hand, a rag. Now, Mary was not Susie Homemaker by any stretch of the imagination, but this was how important this meeting was to her. She wanted everything to be perfect, right down to the furniture in the enclosed conference room in which we were going to have our meeting. And that's exactly what happened. She guided us to this enclosed conference room, and it was a room that was probably about an eighth of the size of the room we're in here today. 4 walls, no windows, 1 set of doors. The meeting was supposed to commence at 8:30. I've been in the business for 35 years. There's never been an insurance meeting that's ever started on time. And that day was no different. 8:30 kind of came and went, everybody kibitzing about their weekend and the kids and soccer and the business and drinking their Starbucks. And then at 8:48, the lights flickered. That's it. We didn't see anything. We didn't hear anything. We didn't feel anything. Just a flicker of lights. Almost immediately, a guy by the name of Rick Blood from the Aon Corporation came crashing into the room, and he said, "Hey, there has been an explosion in the North Tower, and we need to evacuate." 54 intelligent human beings all in the same room at the same time. And we all did the same exact thing. We all looked up at poor Rick and we went, "We're fine, man. It's New York. Stuff happens." Wasn't exactly the word we used. Stuff happens. We'll be fine. Just let us have our meeting. We've come from long and far. We want to keep doing this. We'll be okay. And he looked at us and he kind of had this forlorn look in his face. He said, no, you don't understand. I'm a volunteer fire marshal for the 105th, 104th, 103rd floor. I can't leave until all of you leave. And I want to leave. And he was pretty convincing. And I know that he got everybody out of that room that day because I was the last guy out. He escorted us all to the closest fire stairwell on the 105th floor and proceeded to tell us that we were now going to walk down 105 flights of steps. Oh yeah, A lot of happy campers at that particular point in time. I mean, not too many people smiling. And everybody did the same thing, reached into their left or their right pockets or wherever on their hips and pulled out their cell phone. They were going to call somebody to moan and groan about the fact that we couldn't have our meeting. And something interesting happened on the way to the cell phone. This was back in the day when you had to flip them up. God, I hope none of you still have flip phones. But this was back in the day where you had to flip them up, okay, to get them generated. And something interesting really occurred. Turned them on, tried to turn them on. Nothing happened. Cell service was non-existent. You see, the main cell tower for all of southern Manhattan was on top of the North Tower, the first building to be hit. So cell service was virtually interrupted at that particular point. And you're a bunch of smart people. We're here at a college. You got to be smart people, okay? All right? And I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute. Get on a landline. Call somebody that way. Good idea. Except think about this. Everybody in New York is now trying to call out to their mother, father, sister, brother, spouse, aunt, uncle, lover, whoever, to let them know that they're okay. And even more incredibly, even more believably, it's no stretch of the imagination. Everybody in the world that knows somebody in New York City is now calling in to make sure that mom, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, spouse, whatever, is okay. The landlines were overmatched. They couldn't handle the traffic. Cell service was gone. If you've served this great country in the armed services, you know the first thing that happens when you attack the enemy, cut the lines of communications. And that's exactly what occurred that morning. So now you've got these 54 high-powered execs even more ticked off about the fact that they can't communicate. And, we were all pretty perturbed. And I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, my God, well, didn't you guys know what was going on? And that is exactly the point. Each and every one of you knew way more what was going on outside and inside those buildings than any of us that were right there. We had no clue. Not a clue. We began to make our way down the fire stairwell steps. If you've ever been inside a high-rise building like that, the fire stairwell systems usually work pretty much the same way. The doors are usually closed anyhow, but if they're open, they're on magnets. If there's an emergency, the doors automatically close. They don't lock. There are signs inside those fire stairwells, basically on the backs of the doors at each level or to the right or the left of the doors, that basically say, don't leave here except at the lobby level. I know those signs exist. Those signs are a result of some insurance geek like me. That's a fire safety. That's a life safety issue, okay? Stay in here, get down to the lobby. And when we got down to the 90th floor, the door to the 90th floor was propped open. And everybody's filing out onto the 90th floor. But I'm in the fire insurance business. How ironic is that? I'm in the fire insurance business, and I know better, right? Let me ask you a question. This is not a test, just a little show of hands. How many of you have or have had children between the ages of 13 and 18? Just a little show of hands, right, okay. And when you told them that they will not, they shall not, they cannot do something, what did they do? Amen. Well, you could be 45 years old and be some kind of supposedly smart insurance dude, and you can be just as not thinking. I followed everybody out onto the 90th floor. I didn't know the building. I thought maybe I had to go to another fire stairwell. Wasn't quite sure. Didn't know how the building was laid out. And that's when I experienced the worst 30, 40 seconds of my life. I looked out those windows to the north to see that building in an incredible state. Huge, gaping black holes through the sides of the building. Gray and black billows of smoke pouring out of those holes and up into the sky. Flames redder than any red I had ever seen before, licking up the sides of the building and beyond the roof level. And if you remember, it was a crystal clear September day that day. And I remember being able to see through that smoke, through that fire, and into those huge black holes in the building. And I could see pieces of fuselage of a large plane lodged inside the building. And my immediate thought was, my God, how did the pilot miss that building? And the fact of the matter was, he didn't miss. He didn't miss. And to see all that, and to see furniture, paper, people being pulled out of the building against their will, it was an unbelievable, awesome, gruesome sight. And I was afraid. I was so afraid. I remember thinking to myself immediately, this isn't a made-for-TV movie. This isn't an Xbox game. This is reality. I want to go. I had two strong feelings take over my being almost immediately. The first, a very honest one, because I'm 80 miles south of I come from a city 80 miles south of New York City, Philadelphia, okay? A great rivalry of towns, particularly in sports, okay? And I remember one Friday, boys' religion. That's how we did it back in Catholic school back in the days. Boys were separated from the girls. It didn't really work out so well, but anyhow. And it was Friday afternoon, and Sister's teaching boys' religion, Sister Joseph Regina. And it was the weekend of the New York Giants facing the Philadelphia Eagles that Sunday. Big rivalry, big deal, okay? And I remember Sister telling us, boys, you got to love God. You got to love your neighbor. But I think it's okay to hate New York today. And my God, did I feel this anger at that particular point in time. But that feeling was dashed almost immediately by another, more honest, more true feeling. One that each and every one of us have had, whether it was today, a week ago, a month ago, a decade ago. And yes, gentlemen, you have had this feeling just as much as any woman here this morning. That pit of your stomach, I want my mommy feeling. I just wanted to go home. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go home. I was so afraid. I turned around to leave. People were on that floor. They seemed to be frozen, whether frozen in fear, mesmerized by what they saw, screaming at the top of their lungs, and yet they didn't seem that they could move. I was going. I turned around, and when I did, I ran into Lud Picaro. Lud was from the Zurich Insurance Company. He was in the meeting with me. This guy was a huge human being. Tall, big, giant guy. He was a middle linebacker, all-American middle linebacker at University of Pittsburgh. And when I turned around, I almost knocked him over. I was in such a rush. And he put his big hands on my shoulders, and he said, "What are you going to do, man?" I said, "I'm getting the heck out of here. What are you going to do?" And he said, "You know what? I think that's a good idea. Except before I go, I'm going to go to the restroom." That simple decision cost Lud his life that day. That simple decision. When I got to the top of the fire stairwell at 90, they started making an announcement over the PA system. Some of you have probably heard about this. And the announcement went something to the effect of, the event has been contained to the North Tower. The South Tower is considered safe. We suggest that if you work in the South Tower, that you return to your workstation. If you are a visitor, we suggest that you stay where you are until further notice. If you feel you need to proceed, please proceed with caution. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I either get the sound or I get the look, and thank you for those of you who gave me the look like, what? How could they make that announcement? But think about this. There's a woman or man in charge of building security at this point in time. They're down on the lobby level at this point in time in the event, and now they've got a firefighter on one side, a police person on the other side. There are as many as 25,000 people inside that building. Outside, it's raining concrete, steel, and bodies. And I'm sure the cops and firefighters looked at this person and said, "Where are you going to put these people? You can't let them out. Where are they going to go?" And I'm sure this person's also thinking to themselves, the elevators are going up and down, the electricity's on, the ventilation's working. Everybody stay put. Stay put. It was logical. Let's see what's going to happen. Stay put. Who would have thought that within 18 minutes the same exact thing would happen again? Who would have thought? Now, I was proceeding. I didn't know how cautious I was going to be. And you can't run down switchback steps because the momentum will just ride you into the walls at the end of each set of stairwells. So you got to get the skip thing going. And I'm making my way down, and we get down to the 78th floor, the sky lobby level that I mentioned earlier. And there is Mary Weeman out in front of me. And she's looking back. She goes, "Joey, Joey, Joey." The only other people in the world that call me Joey are my old Polish aunts, you know. "Joey, Joey, I am not walking down 78 flights of steps in these shoes. I'm taking the elevator." She was using a word that you never use here in Brunswick County, guaranteed. Technical term. But that was Mary. Leader, strong, determined. I see Dave Carlone, Senior Vice President for Factory Mutual Insurance Company, the best, the finest fire insurance company in all the world, following Mary to the elevator. I see Al Kappelman, fireman, volunteer fireman, captain of his company out on Long Island, following Mary to the elevator. Finally, some common sense took over my head. You know, I don't know, building, state of duress. I know it's not our building. I don't think I should go in an elevator. So I looked at Mary, and I gave her that kind of a wave, and I turned, and I went back to the stairwell. Arguably, the best decision I've made in what is still my life. Because I was somewhere between the 74th and the 72nd floor when that second plane plowed into our building. That plane went through our building on an angle between floors 78 and 82. We were just a few floors below the strike zone. I have never felt anything like that in my entire life. That concrete stairwell, that bunker that we were inside of, shook at angles. I'm not an engineer, I can't tell you, but shook at angles that it shouldn't be shaking, back and forth, back and forth. The concrete spidering out, the handrails breaking away from the wall, the steps undulating like waves in the ocean underneath our feet. We feel this heat ball blowing by us. We smell this jet fuel, and this thing is just rocking and rolling back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it felt like forever. And it finally stopped and came to. You would have thought it was hours, but it was seconds, maybe a minute. And you would have thought that there would have been this massive pandemonium. And yet, in that stairwell at that point, there was nothing but a stunned silence. I had the good fortune of working with the people from USA Today and ABC News prior to the first anniversary of the event. And I learned something in my visit with them at that time that I always mention at this point in the presentation. Just the heat generated by the plane through the building. No explosion, no fire, no jet fuel burning, just the heat generated by the friction of the steel through the steel was over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. All those people on the 78th floor, sky lobby level, waiting for the elevator, were killed instantly. They literally did not know what hit them. And for them, it was a blessing, because for them, there was no pain. No pain. For those of us that were by, it became somewhat of a surreal event, but it was one of those moments in life when you saw something that we don't see enough. Human nature at its absolute finest. In the moments of crisis, you see it, and it's amazing. If there are teachers out here, and I know there are many, okay, you know the old saying, 5% of the kids cause 95% of the problems? That's true in life. Human beings are good. People want to do good. And we saw it that day. People that were in need, people on crutches, people with casts on their legs, people in chairs, people that were overweight, people that were scared, needed help. And everybody helped people. People just like you and me helped everybody. We coached and coaxed each other down those steps, and we became teammates. We didn't know what was going on, but we knew we were going to get out. Some of the observations on the way down the steps were almost comical. For instance, at one place, at one time, I have never seen so many pairs of women's shoes. Now you think about it, you're on the 70th floor of this high-rise building and you're in 3 or 4 inch heels. As they say in New York, forget about it. A lot of barefooted women that day, okay? If you wanted a new laptop computer, that was your day. There was more electronic equipment inside that fire stairwell than in a bankrupt Circuit City store. There were backpacks, overcoats, briefcases, bags of food, you name it. Stuff just ditched to the side so people could lighten their load and make their way out. And egress was fine. 2, 3, 4 people wide. If anything was in your way, you just kicked it out of the way. And everybody was heading in the same direction until the 35th floor. And that's the chance we had for the first time to encounter the police, the firefighters, and the paramedics from New York City and the Port Authority. Just the looks in their eyes told the story. Just the looks in their eyes. They knew. They knew. They knew that they were going up those steps to fight a fire that they couldn't eat. They knew that they were going up those steps to save lives that they couldn't save. They knew that they were marching into the bowels of hell. And they knew that they were going up, and they knew that they were never, ever coming back. They knew. They knew. I ask you, could you be that brave? Could you be that strong? Right at that same time, there was a guy that was walking along with our group. Absolutely a maintenance guy from the building. He had the brown shirt with the blue yoke and the name tag over the pocket, and a name I never got. And he was carrying along with him one of the most annoying inventions God ever allowed us to create: the Nextel phone with the walkie-talkie feature. And this thing had been incredibly, amazingly quiet the entire time he was walking along with us. And then all of a sudden, as we see the firefighters, the paramedics, the police coming at us, this thing starts to belch and beep and make all kinds of electronic noise. And we hear this voice cry out, "We're on 82, we can't get down, we don't know what we're going to do." And this guy, he's right to my left, stops, dead in his tracks. And he spins to turn around, and I looked at him and I said, "What are you going to do, man? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do?" And he looked at me and he said, "I don't know, but I got to save my friend." I submit to you, that nameless maintenance man, that is a true American hero. That man who was willing to lay down his life to save that of a friend. That is someone who should always, always be remembered. I can only hope that the cops and the firefighters turned that man around that day and let him get out of the building safely. When we got down to the 18th floor, we encountered the next character of the day who was on the 15th floor, but we heard him on 18 because he was using an electronic megaphone or bullhorn. And this guy, security guy from the building, is singing through this thing at the top of his lungs in a voice only a mother could love on payday. I mean, this guy was William Hung revisited, okay? And he's singing "God Bless America," and he doesn't even know all the words. But it was the things that he would say that kind of gave away a little bit of why he was there. He'd say, "This is a day you're never going to forget. This is a day that's going to go down in history. You always remember where you were on September 11th, 2001. You see, like I said, he was a security guy from the building. You all know the story of the Titanic, right? The ship hits the iceberg, it's going down. The captain tells the musicians, go up on the deck, play music, keep them calm, get them off the boat. That's exactly what this guy was sent up there to do. He was sent up there to make sure people were staying calm, make them laugh a little bit. He had to know that bad singing. He was making everybody laugh. get him out of the building. And I wonder how many lives that man saved that day. How many? While giving up his own. I wonder. We got down to the lobby level of the buildings, and it was an eerie sight. Big, huge, arching glass windows, and you could see out those windows, and you could see the twisted steel, the crumbled concrete, and the red blotches on the ground. And you knew what the red blotches were. So we couldn't get out of the building at the lobby level, and everybody that was there in charge of some level of security are escorting us down into the concourse level, the underground. And we went down there, and when we got down there, that's the first chance we had to see people in severe need. People with gaping wounds, missing limbs, true blood and gut stuff. But that human nature that I mentioned takes over, and you want to reach out. You want to try to help. And you couldn't that day. I have never seen at one place at one time so many firefighters, police, paramedics there to help. That's unbelievable outpouring of caring, of concern, of love. And that's what that was that day, this total outpouring of love. So the people that needed the help were getting the help that they needed. And those of us that were okay, we were on our own. And the herd mentality takes over. And you hope somebody at the front of your herd knows where they're going. And you are now in this concourse, this underground concourse, which is a rat maze. Every store known to mankind down there, big giant path train station down there, signs that mean absolutely nothing to you if you're not from New York. 1, 2, 3, 4, red, blue, green, yellow, uptown, downtown, Bronx, Manhattan. You have no clue. And I hear this guy yell out, "We want to get to the northeastern end of this complex. It's the furthest away from the buildings." Bink, my little internal GPS went off, and I said, yeah, he's right. I'm following him. And we're making our way through that rat maze. Like I said, we've made lots of twist and turn. We're finally ready to make our last left. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, Starbucks. And it is open. And there are people in line. I kid you not. I am a card-carrying member of the Starbucks Nation, okay? But I don't know how much double, triple cappuccino or whatever it is people do. It goes to show you that at a time of crisis, even the greatest minds aren't where they need to be. We got up to that northeastern end of the complex. The escalator is no longer escalating, so there's steps. And I'm halfway up the steps to get to the street level and hopefully get out of these buildings. And I hear, "Joe, Joe, Joe." I turn around, and it's David Duffy. David Duffy is my treaty reinsurance broker. He is the smartest human being I know. All right, everybody's looking at me going, treaty reinsurance broker. Okay, let me explain, all right? If you think that your insurance company, whether it's for your business or your home, if you think your insurance company actually takes all the bet, you would be wrong, okay? Insurance companies will lay off some of that capacity that they put out to insure you through a reinsurance treaty. David is my reinsurance treaty broker. What's that make him? He's my bookie. That's what this man is. He's my professional bookie. He's laying off my bets. He's taking millions of dollars of my company's money to make sure that we're secure, we're safe, we're sound. Smartest guy I know. So he yells my name. I turn around and I said, "My God, Duffy, well, what are you doing here?" And I said, wait, that's right. You work here, 54th floor. Why are you behind me? He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you work on 54. I was on 105. You're behind me. Why are you behind me?" You don't want to know." I said, "Yeah, I definitely want to know." And he says, "Well, you see, I was about halfway down, about 25, 26 stories down. And I realized we might not get in the office tomorrow. And I'm in charge of the Yankees tickets for the office." The smartest human being I know went back up 25 flights of steps for the Yankees tickets. Now, I could have understood if they were Tar Heels tickets, but Yankees tickets, my God. Again, not always the minds being where they should be, but fate was at work at that particular moment. Fate was at work. We got out of the building, and as we got up to the ground level, they've got these little bobcat bulldozers just plowing everything, and I mean everything back. It was gruesome. It was truly gruesome. And there are uniforms there, and they're all screaming at us, run, 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 do not stop, run, run, run. And you get across the street, and it's Trinity Church, and you can't help it. You stop, and you turn around, and you see this incredible show, this ticker tape of concrete, steel, and bodies. And Duffy looked at me and he said, where are you going to go? I said, I don't know. I was supposed to go back to Philadelphia today on the train, get in the rental car, drive to the Philly airport, fly back to Chicago, where I lived at that particular point in time. And Duffy said, that's not going to happen. I said, I know. He said, well, listen, you come with me. I live up on the Upper West Side, 111th Street. My wife, Michelle, works in the North Tower, 40th floor. I haven't heard from her. I want to get home. Okay. I said, that's a long way away, 111th Street. He said, you got something better to do? I said, no, honest. Okay. And we started making our way north. And we were 8 blocks north of the building. 8 minutes, short blocks in that section of southern Manhattan. And there was a commercial laundry, doors thrown wide open. WINS, the all-news radio station, blaring out that this was an on-purpose terrorist attack, and our jaws just dropped to the ground. Not here. This can't happen here. But it was the next couple of sounds that are the sounds that haunt those of us that were there that day. It's the first thing I hear every morning, the last thing I hear every night. First, the unmistakable sound of the twisting steel, the crumbling concrete of what once was the South Tower, the building that we had been in just 8 minutes earlier, coming to the ground. And even more eerily, even more gruesomely, the sound of millions of people on the streets of New York, all screaming the same blood-curdling scream, all at the same exact time. We were lucky. Duffy knew somebody in the Tribeca section of the city where we were, and we got into Meredith's flat at that particular point in time, and we did what all of you did. We watched TV and tried to make some sense of what was going on. Ironically, Meredith's husband is stuck in Chicago, where I want to be. And we were about the 5th hour into the event, watching the TV, trying to make some sense, trying to communicate, when one of the true American heroes of that day, no matter what your politics are, one of the great American heroes of that day, the mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, he got on the TV and he started to speak, and he sounded like he was talking to each and every one of us personally. It was just his way. And he said, all right, New York, this has been a tough day. But we're New Yorkers. We're going to get through it. We're going to survive. We're going to recover. And I know that all of you that are out there just want to get home. Do you remember those pictures, folks? Remember those pictures of people walking across the George Washington Bridge to get back to New Jersey, walking out the Long Island Expressway to get back to the island? It was incredible. And Giuliani understood this. He said, I know you just want to get home. And I believe we've mustered enough confidence in our uniforms. And we are going to reopen the subways. Reopen the subways. Incredible, incredible decision to make. Duffy didn't hesitate. He said, come on, we're going. I said, where? He said, we're going to the subway. We're going up to my place. I said, I don't know, Midtown Manhattan, Empire State Building. He said, hey, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We got over to the nearest subway station. We waited, got on the second train. The train went 2 stops up on an express basis and pulled into 32nd Street, Penn Station, Amtrak. Where I had come in that day, hopefully how I could have got out that day. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we didn't say a word to each other. We understood each other perfectly. He knew I wanted to go home. And we got out of that subway together, not saying a word. And we walked into the train station, and we looked like tourists. Absolutely looked like a couple of tourists. Amtrak was doing a heck of a job that day, bringing in empty trains from New Jersey and getting as many people out of Dodge as they could. It was incredible. And when we walked in there looking like the 2 tourists we were, there was this woman in her finest New York accent. And she looks over at me and she says, where are you going, honey? And I said, I need to get to Philadelphia. And she says, there's a train down here. It's about to take off. And I reached into my pocket to give her my return ticket. And she looked at me and she says, are you kidding me? We're not collecting tickets today, sweetie. Some things never change in New York. And you get on that train, and you go underneath the Hudson River in a tunnel, and you come up on the Jersey side, and you look back at what once was the greatest skyline in all the world, now relegated to a gray and black cloud. How sad. How sad. And it's an 80-minute trip from New York City to Philadelphia on that Metroliner train. People sitting, standing, packed in. Not a word was spoken. There were no words to say. And when we got down to 30th Street in Philadelphia, I got off that train, found my rental car, and drove up to Northeast Philadelphia to the house of my mother and father, the house that I was raised in as a kid. And I got to tell you, gentlemen especially, no matter your age, love your mothers. Love your mothers. Because when I got up to the house, there was my mom. She's at the top of the stoop. She comes down. She gives me this big, giant bear hug. She pats my bald head and sobs, "My baby, my baby." I didn't have the heart to remind her that I was the oldest one. But my mom did for me, at that moment, what she continues to do to this day in her life. She helped me, and she loved me. And that's exactly what I needed at that moment in time. I needed my mother's love. And she helped me into the house, and I got into the living room of the house, hit the floor, I don't know, started to watch the TV and passed out. Physical exhaustion, mental fatigue, I don't know. And at about 2 in the morning, I feel this kick in my side. I kind of wake up, shake a little bit, push my glasses back, rub my eyes. My father's hovering over me, and he says, "Well, aren't you ever going to go to bed?" And I went, "Oh my God, I'm 17 again." But I did what he told me. I went up the steps and got a few hours of sleep. Maybe not as many as you got, Elena. And I woke up early the next morning. I was going to make my drive back to Aurora, Illinois, the suburb of Chicago that I lived in that time, and I wanted to go. And I picked up the phone first thing, and I called the office and let them know that I wasn't going to be in. And it was a good thing, because they thought I was dead. And I got in that car, and it was a 14-hour trip from Philadelphia to Aurora, Illinois. And I'm taking a chance here with all these law enforcement officers. I made it in 11 and a half hours. I'm sorry. I just wanted to get home. And this was before rollover minutes. This was before national plans. I mean, I didn't care. I was reaching out and touching anybody that wanted to be touched. It was good to talk. It was good to be talked to. And I was about 10, 15 minutes away from home. And I called my wife for probably what was like the 50th time. And I said, "Hey, I'm almost home. I'm almost there, 10, 15 minutes away." And she went, "Okay." And I said, "You got something better to do?" And she said, "Well, actually, they're having a mass at Our Lady of Mercy." And I thought that maybe, I said, "Stop. It's a good day to go to church. It's a good day. I'll meet you there." And I pulled down Neola Road to Our Lady of Mercy, tried to get into the parking lot, and you would have thought it was Christmas. There was no room at the inn. So I had to park illegally on Neola Road. I'm sorry. And I don't know whether I was more afraid the moment I opened up the back doors of that church or the day before. To see those hundreds of pairs of eyes all staring back at me, knowing where I had been. And I looked through the door, and I looked into the church, and I looked to the right, to the pew where we always sit. We're Roman Catholics. We always sit in the same pew. There is my wife, a couple of my kids, and some of my friends. My wife is one of the most non-demonstrative people you'd ever want to meet. Extremely quiet person. It was incredible to see her jump over the back of that pew. And she runs to the back of that church, and she gives me the greatest hug and a kiss that a man could ever want. And I knew at that moment at that moment, that I was home. I was home. And so that is how this story goes. There are so many concepts and lessons learned in that story that it's almost impossible to recap them all. But when it comes to decisions and decision making, the key lessons are pretty clear. Every decision is important, no matter how big or no matter how small one may seem. A decision can change your life and the lives of others in ways way beyond that which you can ever imagine. The information, the resource, and the trust of your source that you bring to a decision-making process determines the strength and accuracy of that decision, for better or for worse. And the most important lesson learned, making the right decisions is not easy. It is not easy. But if you trust yourself, if you trust your gut, your heart, your soul, your resources, your mind, you can make a critical decision that can have tremendously successful results. I'm here today, alive and fortunate to be able to share this with all of you because of a series of decisions made in the most critical of situations. However, you don't need to be in a flaming high-rise building on the 105th floor during a terrorist attack to be that effective and successful. You can be in a beautiful auditorium on a beautiful April day in Brunswick County, North Carolina. And by making the right decisions, you can have positive and lasting effects on your peers and your partners, helping them and you to improve and maybe even save the lives of others. I don't do this to feel better. God knows, recanting this story only breaks my heart again and again. I don't do it for fame or notoriety, nor do I do it for monetary gain. I do not accept payment for my presentations. I do this because I believe as a person who has been part of a historic event, it is my obligation, it is my duty to tell the story and to give a voice to the 3,000 who's lost their own voices that day so that they once more can be heard. To allow their spirits, so senselessly dashed that day, to once more rise and to let those spirits soar, reminding us and reminding them that while their lives may have been lost, they were not lost in vain. And while I seek no compensation, I do ask for payment from each and every one of you in one way and in one way only. To always remember and to never, never forget. God bless the foundation. God bless Brunswick Community College. God bless North Carolina. And God bless America. Thank you.